What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back to Thrash Reviews, where yours truly, Thrash Maniac 99, continues to review upcoming hard rock and heavy metal albums in the calendar year of 2016, and tonight I'm reviewing a big one that came out today, the newest release from progressive metal pioneers Fate's Warning, and their album titled Theories of Flight. So, for those who don't know about Fate's Warning is a progressive metal band that started in the early 80s out of the Northeast and are one of the pioneering bands of this genre, along with Queensryche, Savatage, and eventually Dream Theater being a pioneer of this genre too. But Fate's Warning's early stuff was almost on the borderline of power metal, and then over the course of the next few records, up until 89, they flirted with thrash metal at times, especially on albums like No Exit and Awaken the Guardian. But ever since the 90s, they've morphed into a real prog metal band, kind of like what Dream Theater would eventually become, and they just did it heavier and a little bit more aggressive. Now we get to this album, Theories of Flight. Let's take a look and see what we've got. So the first track I want to talk about is 7 Stars. And this is a heavy tune. I mean, you want to talk about heavy prog metal, Fate's Warning is the band. While Queensryche and Dream Theater have their heavy moments, out of the big three of the original prog metal tree from the 80s, early 90s, which most people would consider Fate's Warning, Queensryche, Dream Theater, Fate's Warning was the more heavier of the three. And this song certainly proves it. While they use the protocol of a prog band a little bit more to their benefit than on some other bands out there, and this track certainly proves that point that, hey, you can be progressive and melodic, but you have to be heavy enough to really show that, hey, not only are we great players, but we can bust out some heavy riffs. And this song was all about riffing, a great guitar solo even by Jim Mattheos, or Mattheos, however you pronounce his last name. Nothing else can be said other than the fact that this is probably one of the highlights of the album. Let's move on to the next track I want to touch base on is The Light and the Shade of Things. Over 10 minutes in length, and this is a roller coaster of a track. You start and end with a lot of that soft intro-outro kind of an idea, but in the middle, the cusp of the song is really heavy, very intricate. The lyrics also telling, actually this whole album basically could be considered a concept album because every song lyrically on this album is dealing with the theme of fighting in a war, especially in like Air Force stuff and what have you, and missing your family and going through battle. And it speaks to, I'd say this album, a lot of people who have been through this kind of stuff could really relate to. And that's a really powerful thing with this album, and this song keeps that theme going. But the last track I want to touch base on is The Ghosts of Home, the longest song of the album at 10.5 minutes. This is definitely like the real emotional tune because of the fact of how lyrically it just puts you on a ride, but musically it's really heavy, and there's even a breakdown here and there on a couple songs on this album. But with Ghosts of Home, to me, not only is it a musical gem, it's a lyrical gem. Read the lyrics, you will really see that there's a lot of storytelling within this album, and especially within the song. So overall with this album, if you're a fan of prog metal, this is definitely for you, and I'm a fan of this music, so this is a really solid work. The flow of the album was spot on. It didn't feel like it was unfinished. Ray Adler's voice on this album is sort of similar to how he sounded on the Redemption album earlier this year. And again, like I said with this, the theme of this album is very relatable to anybody who's ever fought in the war and missed their family and has to go through all the trials and tribulations of war, and especially with aircraft and stuff. This song, or not the song, the album can really speak to you. Musically, probably one of the band's heavier records. This has probably been one of their best albums since the 90s, a lot of people would say. And I've heard from a lot of people about this album. This was no disappointment. In fact, this might be one of the best prog metal albums to come out this year. So where would it rank in prog metal albums as far as like with bands like Dream Theater and bands like that? This album definitely blew The Astonishing away. It was a lot better also than the Redemption album, even though the Redemption album was really awesome. But overall, I would give this album a 92 out of 100. This is some great music from one of the all-time greats of progressive metal. So, if for some of you out there who had pretty much been missing, I cannot speak English properly, but fuck outtakes. If you've kind of fallen off the wagon of Fate's Warning, say like you stopped listening to them for a long time, check this album out and it will get you right back into the band, I guarantee it. But thank you guys for watching. Peace out and have a good night.